Hi, in our Introduction to Processing video 3, we're going to have you get started by looking at some p-vectors. It turns out that vectors are very convenient for people to talk about motion, and so we're going to get you started on that. To do that, we're going to just have you look at some code that involves p-vectors and have you hack on it a little bit, just so you kind of get comfortable with the idea behind it. You'll be far from an expert, but you have a little better idea about where this is going. So we're going to go to Tutorials. As we did in the last video, we're going to go down to p-vectors. We're going to open up this book on p-vectors, and you're looking at the first chapter, and there's a lot of stuff here. This is very dense reading. It's technical reading. It's very challenging. You have to read it slowly. A lot of detail. You can't breeze through it. And sometimes it's not the most exciting thing to just start with, unless you know what you're looking for. And right now, we don't really know what we're looking for. So what we're going to have you do is this. We're going to have you grab the code you did in the last video. It's this code right here that makes that bouncing ball. We're going to stick that in a sketch and get a ball bouncing around like we did before. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to stick it in a sketch. Okay, I have one up ready to go. There we go. Pop it in there, just like we did yesterday. Run that sketch. You don't need to scroll up. I just do for some reason all the time. Get that sketch going. Sure enough, there's our ball that's bouncing around. So I'm going to stick this over here because we're going to be adding to the screen here. Make a little room. Boom. There's our ball bouncing around. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go back into that book, back in the first chapter, and notice what it says here: bouncing ball with no vectors. Okay. So if you want to, you can start reading the technical details about vectors. If you want to do that, you will be doing that eventually. But really what I'm going to have you do instead is just keep on scrolling down, and pretty soon through all of this mumbo jumbo, holy smokes, down through here, you're going to see a sketch that says, oh, bouncing balls with p-vector. Cool, okay. Whatever these p-vectors are, what we're going to do is just to help get an idea, let's just copy this code, and we're going to stick this in a second sketch. So up here, new, get a new sketch going. Click on this, do we get processing up? Get a new sketch going. There's a new sketch. I'm going to move it over here. I'm going to paste that in there, and I'm going to run that code. Boom. And look what we get. We get a bouncing ball. Click on this one, compare the two. They have the same bouncy behavior. They're sticking between the four walls. All that looks the same, but notice right away that one's moving faster than the other. Okay? And the code that you just loaded has p-vector stuff in it. So as you look at the code that we started with over here, the bouncing ball without p-vectors, and then bouncing ball with p-vectors, they're both bouncing balls, but the behavior of the ball is a little different. One's going faster, it's going faster over here than it is over here. So what we'd like you to do is just start playing with the code that involves p-vectors without even knowing what a p-vector is. And part of this is just getting comfortable with it. And to do that, you just want to hack on a little bit. And the first thing we'd like you to do is this. Go into this code and figure out how to make this ball move at the same speed as this ball. And you can change the speed on both of them if you wish, but get them going the same speed. Okay, and as you do that, you're going to be playing with p-vector a little bit. Like, okay, you might learn a little bit about it then. The other thing we'd like you to do is, if you notice if you run this code, I'll stop this one. When I run it, notice where the ball starts. See how it starts in the middle? And same thing over here. If I run this code, notice where the ball starts. It starts in the middle. What we'd like you to do, after you get the balls moving the same speed, is get the balls to start in the upper left-hand corner. So it starts right here, and it starts right here. Work on both sets of code to where the ball is starting in the upper left-hand corner. You're going to learn a little more about p-vector as you do that. The next thing we'd like you to do, and it's the third thing we'd like you to do with this p-vector with sketches, is we want you to compare the two sketches. So you're going to look at the one that has bouncy ball with no p-vectors. And you're going to look at the one that has bouncy ball with p-vectors. And we want you to identify some areas that are different. What are some places where the code in bouncy ball with no p-vectors is different than bouncy ball with p-vectors? In other words, can you find the areas in bouncy ball with p-vectors that's different? And just want you to highlight that. So, 3 things. Get the balls to go the same speed, because right now they're not. Okay. Get the balls to both start in the upper left-hand corner, because they don't right now. They start in the middle. And then we want you to identify differences between the bouncy ball sketch with no p-vectors and the bouncy ball sketch with p-vectors. And we want you to put a screencast together illustrating those 3 things. Hey, here's the change I made. I'm doing it right in front of you. I'm making this change so the balls go the same speed. Cool. And look at the changes I'm making so the balls both start in the upper left-hand corner. Cool. Show us that happening. And then right here in the code, show us in the code where there are differences. Bouncy ball with no p-vectors compared to bouncy balls with p-vectors. And we'd like you to submit that screencast for us, just like you've done in the previous 2. Okay? Good luck with your hacking. And again, this idea is just to get you a little comfortable with the idea of a p-vector. You're not going to walk away knowing details about a p-vector. You won't. Well, if you do, that's great. But that's not expected of you. But it's a first introduction. And soon we'll be diving into some of that technical reading so you can learn a little more about p-vectors. So, have fun with your first look at p-vectors.